Intelligence isn't something you're simply born with. It's something you train. Like muscles in the gym, your mind strengthens with deliberate effort. And yet, most people walk around thinking intelligence is this static, fixed thing, as if you either have it or you don't. But the truth is, your brain is more adaptable than you think. Every choice you make, every habit you form, is either sharpening or dulling your thinking. The Stoics didn't measure intelligence by academic degrees or clever words. They saw it as the ability to navigate life wisely. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, believed the mind was something you discipline, not decorate. Real intelligence, to him, meant self-mastery. The ability to think clearly, even in chaos. The power to remain steady when the world isn't. So, don't think of intelligence as a race to prove you're better than others. That's not the Stoic way. The goal is to become sharper than you were yesterday. To build a mind that cuts through distraction, emotion, and confusion, and lands on clarity. And that clarity doesn't come all at once. It comes from showing up for your mind daily, from choosing the hard path over the easy one, from habits that seem small but compound in time, like a drop of water carving stone. This is how you quietly start to outgrow people, not through bragging, not through ego, but through consistent work on yourself. And it begins with one of the most underrated superpowers in the modern world: focus. In a world that pulls your attention in 100 directions, focus has become rare. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Not the surface-level kind of focus where you're halfway paying attention while checking your phone, but the kind that goes deep, where your entire mind is absorbed in one thing. That's where real intelligence is built. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet still carved out time to think, to write, to reflect. He understood that scattered attention leads to scattered thinking, and when your thinking is scattered, your life follows. But when you focus, truly focus, you train your mind to cut through noise like a blade through fog. Start with just 30 minutes a day. One task, no distractions. Shut off notifications. Close the tabs. Tell the world you're unavailable. It won't feel natural at first. It's not supposed to. You're rewiring a mind that's grown used to interruption. But over time, this habit becomes armor. You'll get more done in those 30 minutes than most people do all day. Tools like the Pomodoro technique or mindfulness meditation aren't trendy gimmicks. They're ancient in essence. Even the Stoics practiced versions of them long before those names existed. They knew focus isn't just about productivity, it's about peace. It's about reclaiming your power to think without the world thinking for you. And here's the ripple effect. When you learn to focus, you learn to listen better. You understand faster. You solve problems more effectively. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. Because a focused mind doesn't just perform better, it lives better. So, if you want to be smarter than most people around you, start where they're weakest. Train your attention like a muscle. Make it so strong, so sharp that no notification, no craving, no chaos can shake it. From there, your intelligence doesn't just grow, it becomes unstoppable. Once you begin to master your focus, the next step is choosing what you let in. And there's no habit more powerful for shaping your mind than reading. Not for entertainment alone, but to grow. Because when you read with purpose, you don't just absorb information. You absorb perspective, patterns of thought, and wisdom that took others decades to earn. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations from thin air. He read deeply. He studied the thinkers before him. He reflected on their insights and shaped them into something uniquely his. That's what reading offers. A chance to sit with the minds of people who lived hundreds or thousands of years ago, yet still understand you better than your closest friends. And you don't need to read 100 books a year, just 10 pages a day, that's it. It stacks up faster than you think, and what matters isn't how many books you finish, but how deeply they finish you. Fiction stretches your empathy. Philosophy sharpens your logic. Science and history give you mental maps for understanding the world. Each genre adds new tools to your intellectual toolbox, but it's not just about variety. It's about reflection. When you read, don't just move your eyes across the page. Pause, question, highlight, make notes in the margins. Ask, how does this apply to my life? That's what turns reading into transformation. Even Seneca reminded his followers not to jump from book to book like a buffet, but to digest what you've read, slowly and intentionally. Because wisdom isn't in the number of books on your shelf. It's in the truths that take root and change how you think. And if life feels too busy, use audiobooks, podcasts, book summaries. Use what you can, where you can, but stay consistent. You don't have to be a scholar to become wise, just someone who chooses to feed their mind with better fuel. The right book at the right time can change the trajectory of your life, but only if you make space for it. So when others scroll endlessly, you open a book. When others chase shortcuts, you build knowledge, one page at a time. That habit alone, it sets you apart. What reading gives you in insight, reflection turns into clarity, because information alone isn't wisdom. You need space to process it. And that space doesn't appear by accident. It's something you create deliberately through the habit of daily reflection. Think about it. How often did days slip by without really knowing what you learned, what challenged you, or what you felt? That's how people drift. Not from a lack of effort, but from a lack of awareness. Reflection stops that drift. It's how you check in with yourself so your actions stay aligned with your values. Seneca, one of the great Stoic minds, ended each day asking himself what he did well, what he could have done better, and what he learned. Not to shame himself, but to grow. His wisdom didn't come from a perfect life. It came from examining his imperfections and choosing to do better the next day. You don't need hours, just 5 minutes at the end of your day. A notebook, a quiet moment, a simple set of questions. What did I learn today? Where did I struggle? What am I grateful for? That's it. Over time, these tiny reflections begin to reveal patterns. You notice where you self-sabotage. You realize what decisions actually make you feel fulfilled and which ones leave you empty. This is how ordinary days turn into extraordinary growth. And if writing isn't your thing, just sit in silence for a while. Meditate. Watch your thoughts without judgment. The point isn't to be perfect. It's to become more conscious of who you are and who you're becoming. The Stoics believed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Reflection helps you separate the two. It shows you what's real, what deserves your energy, and what's just noise. And once you begin to see clearly, you start living more intentionally in a world that rewards constant motion. Reflection is your pause. It's the moment you slow down, think deeper, and move forward smarter. Because no matter how much you read or experience, none of it sharpens your mind like turning inward and learning from your own life.
If reflection sharpens the mind, then discomfort stretches it. Because growth doesn't happen in the safety of routine. It lives at the edges, in the moments when you're slightly unsure, slightly nervous, maybe even uncomfortable. The Stoics didn't seek ease, they welcomed difficulty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's not just poetic, it's practical. Intelligence isn't built by repeating what you already know. It's forged in the fire of challenge. Neuroscience backs this up. Every time you try something unfamiliar, a new skill, a tough conversation, an intimidating project, your brain forms new connections. This rewiring, called neuroplasticity, is what makes you sharper, more adaptable, and more mentally agile. You felt this before. Maybe it was giving a speech, trying a new language, or starting over in a new job. In the moment, it probably felt uncomfortable, but afterwards, you were changed. Because discomfort is where capacity is built. The mistake most people make is assuming growth must be dramatic, but it doesn't have to be. One small challenge a week is enough to start building momentum. Speak up in a meeting. Try an activity that's out of your element. Ask a question you've been too shy to ask. Little by little, these moments compound. The goal isn't to seek pain, it's to stop avoiding effort. Comfort feels good in the short term, but over time, it dulls your mind. When you challenge yourself, you wake it up. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Every deliberate stretch adds a layer to your character and intelligence, and eventually, the things that once terrified you, they become your new normal. So ask yourself, what's one thing I've been avoiding out of fear or discomfort? That's likely the exact place where your next level of growth is waiting. The beauty of leaning into discomfort isn't just who you become, it's the realization that fear was never the enemy. Stagnation was. And once you get used to moving forward with a little fear in your pocket, you start to trust that on the other side of discomfort is transformation. The moment you believe you've learned enough is the moment your growth stops. True intelligence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing you never will. That's what lifelong learning is all about. It's not a phase or a goal. It's a mindset. Even Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, didn't stop learning. He read, reflected, and questioned his own beliefs. He once wrote, "If someone can show me I'm wrong and prove it with truth, I will gladly change." That humility, the ability to remain teachable, is what set him apart. The smartest people you know probably aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who ask the best questions. Because curiosity is what keeps the mind young. It's what drives you to explore beyond your current understanding, to dig deeper, and to connect ideas in new ways. Today, lifelong learning is easier than ever. You don't need to enroll in university to keep growing. YouTube, podcasts, online courses, and books are all at your fingertips. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You're not trying to master everything. You're just trying to keep moving forward. It starts by paying attention to what genuinely sparks your interest. Maybe it's psychology or technology or history. Follow that thread. Learn not to impress others, but to impress upon yourself that growth is still happening. And sometimes, the best learning happens when you step outside your usual patterns. If you always read self-help, pick up a novel. If you're a numbers person, explore philosophy. That contrast forces your brain to adapt. And that's where the real sharpening begins. As you learn, share what you discover. Teaching or explaining something you just learned is one of the most powerful ways to solidify it. And when you start to see knowledge not as something to hoard, but as something to exchange, you begin to build not just intelligence, but wisdom. Because at the end of the day, lifelong learning isn't just about absorbing facts. It's about becoming someone who evolves, someone who adapts, someone who doesn't get stuck in old patterns. The more you learn, the more tools you have, and the better equipped you are to handle life with clarity, creativity, and purpose.
All the knowledge in the world means little if you can't handle your own emotions or connect with the people around you. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is often the missing piece in someone's personal growth. It's not as flashy as IQ, but it's what keeps your intelligence grounded in real-life interactions. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people would be arrogant, jealous, or rude, not out of malice, but because of their own inner confusion. That mindset wasn't cynical, it was compassionate. It allowed him to lead without bitterness because he didn't take things personally. Understanding your own emotions is where it begins. When something triggers you, frustration, envy, anxiety, do you notice it, or do you react on autopilot? Developing self-awareness is like installing a mirror inside your mind. You start catching yourself before your emotions take the wheel. From there, empathy becomes your superpower. And empathy isn't about agreeing with everyone. It's about trying to see where they're coming from. You listen with the intent to understand, not just to respond. That quiet shift in how you approach conversations can deepen your relationships, improve collaboration, and ease conflict. It's not easy. In fact, it might be one of the most demanding forms of intelligence because it requires restraint, humility, and a willingness to pause before reacting. But that pause, that's where maturity lives. Seneca, another Stoic, wrote about this too. He warned against letting anger or resentment hijack your behavior. When you're emotionally reactive, you give away control. But when you respond with intention, you stay in charge of your character, even in chaos. Journaling is one tool that helps. At the end of the day, write down how you felt and how you responded. Over time, patterns emerge. You start to see which situations tend to get under your skin and what you might do differently next time. And in doing so, you don't just become more self-aware, you become more human. You build trust. You create space for vulnerability. You lead with clarity. Because the truth is, intelligence without emotional intelligence is incomplete. The sharper mind is important, but the wiser heart is what helps you use it well. You can't expect your mind to operate at full capacity if your body is running on fumes. A sharper brain starts with the basics: movement, sleep, and nutrition. It sounds simple, but it's the foundation most people skip while searching for some complex secret to intelligence. The Stoics would have called this eukrasia, mastery over the self. Epictetus, despite being physically limited, still emphasized caring for the body as a duty. He saw it as a temple that supports the soul's strength. And modern science agrees. Your physical habits shape your mental sharpness more than you think. Start with sleep. While the world praises hustle, your brain regenerates in silence. Sleep is when your mind organizes what you've learned, cleans out mental fog, and resets. Without enough of it, even basic thinking becomes a struggle. 7 to 8 hours isn't a luxury, it's maintenance. Next is food. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but it uses over 20% of your energy. That means what you eat matters more than you realize. Whole foods, omega-3 fats, greens, these aren't just good for your body, they fuel clearer thoughts and better memory. On the flip side, processed sugar and greasy meals dull your focus like fog on a windshield. Then there's movement. You don't need to train like an athlete. Even a 20-minute walk can improve circulation to your brain, reduce anxiety, and unlock creative thinking. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, practiced wrestling, archery, and walking daily, not to sculpt his body, but to discipline his will. This all comes down to respect, not just for your appearance, but for your potential. When you treat your body with care, your brain thanks you with clarity. And clarity is what turns information into insight. Start small. Cut back on screens before bed. Walk more. Drink water. Eat foods that don't come wrapped in plastic. Build routines that help you rest and recharge. These aren't chores, they're investments.
Not flashy, but powerful. Because at the end of the day, intelligence isn't just mental, it's physical too. When the body is neglected, the mind suffers. But when it's nurtured, you don't just think better, you live better.